Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hang out with these nerds.
I'm Ted.
I'm Ryan.
And today we are going to be talking about GM Fiat, breaking the rules for more fun.
If you want to find out how to game with Nerdarchy or get weekly gaming tips, jump down to the description below, sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter.
So, you know, I do this in my games all the time, especially when it comes to rewards. I just rather like invent and make up rewards and give them to my players that aren't isn't treasure, isn't loot, isn't magic items, than actually actually giving them stuff out. So for instance, like 5th edition has a really cool feature that I really enjoy, and that is backgrounds with features. So I've given them out as rewards, and used my powers as the DM to go, oh,
my godlike power.
Yeah. Unlimited power. Tiny living space. And I'm like, hey, well, now you've done these things and you've been recognized for it. Your character is now actually considered a knight as well, and use the noble variant feature.
Yeah.
There's tons of ideas that you can mine from different literature that we've looked at and gone and we've looked at it because we're nerds. We look at stuff and go, well, how would you do that in D&D? Yeah. You can't. It doesn't work. Well, that could be very much the instance where your DM Fiat comes into place, and you can allow players to do some fun things.
Yeah. Well, you can also, as we have both done, something happens, you drink a potion, you solve a puzzle, you talk to the right person, and you're bestowed a gift.
A boon of some sort, yeah.
So what kind of things can you offer? Anything you want. Spell slots, feats, stat bumps, racial features, small class features, something first level, maybe second if you really want to stretch things out. So you can give out all of these kind of things that there's no way in any of the books to say, oh, well, yeah, if you do this, you get that, short of taking those class levels, being that race.
There's other things, too. Like, for instance, say you're running a game, and your game requires all of your players to fall asleep, but you have elves, right? Mm-hmm. Elves are immune to sleep, magical sleep. So I kind of had this come up in like a storyline that I wrote, and so instead of falling asleep, I have them fall unconscious. Mm-hmm. And nothing bad. You shouldn't be using DM Fiat to make bad things happen to your players. It was just to progress the story. Right. So it was a thing that happens. They fall unconscious. The rest of the party falls asleep. Everyone wakes up. Then the story and adventure can start, and let the fun happen.
Right. Yeah. No one's immune to being unconscious.
Yeah. As long as you're not as long as you're not doing anything to the character's asleep, and then somebody comes in and slits all their throats. Sometimes you can do that sort of hand-waving, off-camera sort of stuff, and really it's best served to, have that happen before the story picks up. You could just say, you kind of describe them being at the feast, and you're eating the food and drink, and then the last thing you remember is, your head falling into the soup, or whatever.
And you drowned.
Well, so,
I guess what you said about that.
Right, that does go against the murdering the characters outright, but then you wake up and you're in a cell. So, people struggle with the idea of capturing the player characters to do a prison break sort of thing, or a whatever sort of situation. Whereas if you kind of have these things happen off screen, okay, you guys are now in this situation, so it's going to be more difficult and challenging, and you absolutely shouldn't do this kind of stuff all the time. But every once in a while, that prison break sort of scenario, maybe you have a session or two like that where they have to find their gear and things like that. Well, if you had an 8th level party, that they're pretty badass when they have all their weapons and their armor, your paladin, your fighter, and his plate mail. You take that away, a friggin' goblin and kobold's a pretty significant threat to an unarmored warrior character.
Unarmed.
So maybe they can go find daggers or fashion shivs or something like that. But if you went from having an 18 armor class to now having or a 9 if you dumped dex,
right?
A gang of goblins friggin' scary at this point. But it's fun. We play these games to have our characters threatened. So
be challenged. Yeah. The other a good example that was brought up was Wolfgar. Well, not Wolfgar, but Brunar Battlehammer.
Right.
You know, from the what's the name of the trilogy? I just totally
Icewind Dale
trilogy. Exactly. You know, he's clearly a fighter character, yet he creates a magic item.
Yeah.
Like in D&D, that can't really happen. You know, the rules don't really allow for that.
Well, in 5th edition, there's nothing that says this is how you create a magic item.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's not particular rules for it.
In previous editions, it's always been this is how you do it, and you've always needed to be a wizard. So how does Brunar Battlehammer get to make?
Well, there are some rules for it. So, but yeah, pretty much it kind of alludes to the fact that you have to be a spellcaster,
Right.
Yeah.
in the DMG. But like if you wanted to introduce that into your game, you could totally break the rules and have that happen because it creates a memorable scene. It'll create even if it's like a +1 weapon. Like the fact that your fighter was able to craft it makes it so much more
Meaningful
to that character, and you know it might be something that they keep forever, even if it's not their best item anymore, just because they made it.
Well, I mean, you could do a thing like in my world. Every dwarf has the potential to, once in their lifetime, make a weapon of like the greatest thing they're ever going to make, and essentially, it's a magic item. That could be a potential thing, or maybe you have to go to a special enchanted forge to make this item, and do that, and spend an entire day or an entire week at making this magical and imbuing this item, something like that. So again, like figuring out your world's fiction. And have this thing that's not typically it's in the rule book, but you can make it happen and it exists.
I think a really good example that a lot of people use when it comes to Fiat is probably criticals, fumbles, and
because
successes.
Not typically, it's not incorporated into ability checks like skill checks. But I actually like the idea that on a 1, like a master carpenter can still hit his hand with a friggin' hammer, like it happens, or people sever their thumb. So I like that idea. On a 1, something bad happens, and on a 20, something awesome happens, and maybe there's some gradations in what occurs. So yeah.
Well, I was thinking more too like combat as well. Like depending on, it's like every group does this different, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes some groups critical fumble means you're going to take the damage for the weapon, or someone near you will. Yeah. Or you trip, you fall, you lose your action. Me personally, as a GM, I kind of mix it up. Sometimes I have
whatever seems right for the scene, right? Like that's really
pretty much. Or sometimes on a win in my mood, or sometimes like on a crit, I might do something different instead of just doing double damage. I might give them like a cleave type attack or something, or have something detrimental happen to the bad guy or the monster in addition to the extra damage.
If you wanted to reward reward that success, and a regular attack was going to finish it off, what if it had 2 hit points left? Well, you could turn that attack into an auto attack on the next player. You could
next creature.
The next creature.
That'll teach those players to crit in your game.
It goes right through the bad guy and into your ally.
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah. And his name is Kenny. He's wearing an orange parka.
Oh, poor Kenny!
Yeah.
No, you bastards!
Yeah.
So what are some other good examples of breaking the rules to have more fun in your game? One of the things is just the saying yes, really. When your players try to do something that maybe goes against a little bit what they can normally do, and allow them to try it anyway.
Yeah. Well, and so there was like an instance where going yes might have went too far, where Scott wanted his character Asen to make this insanely powerful armor that's like. It's more powerful than anything we've introduced into the world.
Right.
And so that becomes a problem, but maybe you find the scaled back way, or you can start adventuring toward making this thing, but understand that it's a momentous undertaking, because as of yet in our world, nothing to this power level has been manifested yet.
Right.
Well, Ted did say yes in a way, because he had his character kidnapped and tortured for the secrets of the armor.
Oh, great. He did. Yeah. So there's a plus. Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I had another example, so normally in the player's handbook it's spelled out that, or maybe it's in the DMG, about spellcasting from scrolls. Typically, only if your character has that spell on on that character's spellcasting list, can you cast it from that scroll? Well, I mean, maybe you could say that just characters who are spellcasters can cast scrolls, or maybe anybody can use a scroll in your campaign.
What if you were proficient in Arcana and you made a
maybe you have a check
of a certain...
maybe you have a check to do something like that. I think also too, like the thief gets some access to being able to sort of fiddle with scrolls, but you could maybe make it that a fighter could, a champion fighter could use it, perhaps.
The village idiot. The village idiot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you back to like house rules. You roll a 1 on an Arcana check to use a scroll. That could be fun.
It blows up
for the GM, really.
Well, I believe I think there's a misread table in the DMG now for scrolls.
I have to go look this up.
As well as the mixing potions table. So glad that's back from first edition.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so that's super fun.
So what do you guys think? How do you break the rules in your game? What kind of cool stories do you have where you have? Put it in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
You can Patreonize us in a good way over on Patreon.
You can hang out with us over on Facebook.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.